Okay. Wonderful. So we've got a couple people. We'll wait a few minutes to really get started, but thank you everyone for joining. Awesome. Great. All right, we'll give it just a couple more minutes. Everyone's so punctual. I really appreciate that. Figured when I gave people the option to watch the recording later, then maybe no one would join live. So I really appreciate everybody doing this. I know it's long days and talking about a pandemic at the end of a long day might be a hard sell. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. Okay, so I guess we'll get started. My name is Lily Wasserman. I'm the development director here at Raven Radio. I joined the team just in July and moved to Sitka in mid-August. So many of you I haven't met, and I really look forward to doing so. Hopefully not before too long. COVID has, of course, really changed the way Raven Radio has done events, and it was a really interesting time to join this position because events are such a big part of the Sitka community and a big part of the traditions here at Raven Radio. So having to navigate that has been really interesting and came with a lot of questions. And there were so many moments when I really wished that I had somebody to ask my questions, both for my job and figuring out, could we do this? Could we not do this? And also for my personal life. And that's kind of how the idea for this event came to be. I figured this would be a really direct and efficient way to get our questions answered. And I know that so many of us have the same questions. So I figured, your question is probably shared by many. And thank you so much for submitting questions, and we'll get to as many as we can tonight. I'm going to hand over the microphone, I guess, in just a second. But before I do, this is, of course, a free event. But if you feel inspired to donate, we always welcome your donations, and you can donate very easily at kcaw.org/donate. If you ever have questions about membership, what it means to become a member, having technical issues, whatever it is, feel free to reach out to me at development@kcaw.org, or also feel free to just say hi. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Martha Pearson. She's the director of Search Health Promotion and also hosts our wonderful show, Health Chat. She'll be moderating the event tonight. And yeah, go ahead, Martha.
Thanks so much, Lily. Great job. And thanks for coming to Sitka in our most interesting time. And my gratitude also to everyone who's on the call. I am going to be the host today, and that just means I can see the attendees on the call. I see all 13 of you so far, and I will keep an eye on the attendees. I'll also keep an eye on the chat. If those of you in attendance want to type in a question, please use the Q&A bubble. If you go to the bottom of your screen on Zoom, there is an option for Q&A, and there's also an option for chat. They're similar but different functions. If you type something in the Q&A, that goes to the whole group, and when it gets answered, we'll click a button and it will go away and make room for the next question. So feel free to use those two functions. I'll be watching those. And also I wanted to let people know that today's session is being recorded just for other users to watch at a later date. So if that's not a comfortable thing for you, it might be a good time to maybe log off and listen to the recording yourself later. But otherwise, we are recording right now. And as Lily said, I work at Search. I also am a volunteer at Raven Radio. I've lived in Sitka since 2002 and love living here, love working here. One of my colleagues here in public health is, of course, public health nurse Denise Ewing, who is our guest and expert today. Denise has received all the questions that were submitted in advance of the session. So she has this list of questions and has had some time to prepare answers. And we are going to go through that list and then also have time for people to ask clarifying questions or follow up. We're hoping that we will have time to make sure everybody's questions are answered and you have the information that you need. So Denise, I'm going to let you take the mic, so to speak, and introduce yourself, say a little bit about how you came to be a public health nurse and live here in Sitka, and then we'll start it off with the first set of questions.
All right, well, thank you very much, Martha, and thank you, Lily. So my name is Denise Ewing. I am the public health nurse here in Sitka. I've been here just a little over a year now and am completely enjoying living here. It's beautiful, though I know it's a lot different during this COVID pandemic than it was a year ago. It's still such a great place to be, and community spirit and just lovely. The people and the place is just lovely. So I'm glad to be a part of you here. I've been a nurse for over 20 years, worked in community health and public health for over 15 years. And so I'm not new to that. Also, I've lived overseas in the South Pacific on some small islands, and also Dominican Republic and Mexico and some places in Fiji that I've went to. So I've ascertained some what I feel critical experience in rural communities that I feel has given some good background and help during this time. And this is my first ever pandemic, as you know, most of you. But definitely I'm learning as I go. And so I'm not too comfortable with the title COVID, what is it?
Expert.
Yeah, no. But probably a little bit more than most, because I am in it up to my nose and eyeballs every day, but definitely learning as I go. And it's just it's been a challenge, but it's also been rewarding, and just a very interesting time in history to be a public health nurse and be a nurse. So I'm grateful for that and grateful to be here.
Great. Well, we had a lot of questions submitted in advance, and as you can imagine, many people have the same sort of area of questioning. So we've grouped them into different basic groups so that maybe we can answer them all in one shot. Denise, where would you like to start? There's a bunch of great topics here.
You just go ahead, pick one.
So let's talk about first, let me see, what was really, I think one of the things that would be good to cover is basically how the virus is transmitted. And that's going to really lead to the discussion of mask wearing and masks, because I think those two really go very tightly together. Okay. So if you could just give a quick overview of how the virus is basically transmitted and how a person can catch it, and then answer the questions we have posed on masks. Our basic questions such as, should I wear a mask when I'm outside? Why are they important? And different types of masks, are different types of masks better than others? So we can kind of make sure we cover all those points.
Okay. So I do have some notes here. So if you see me looking, I've got just some, quick notes to try to keep me on task. But how COVID is spread is primarily through droplet transmission, and so that's person to person. Droplet transmission, and of course that is heightened in in an indoor setting with multiple people in that setting, and also something to keep in mind that's important is it's not only the number of people, but also the length of time and an accumulation of those. So when we're talking about being in a room with people and individuals in closed areas, it's a cumulative effect. So it's kind of like, I suppose, like dominoes, you just keep adding to it. And the more you add to it, the risk then of transmission increases with that.
Okay.
So being indoors would then increase it. Not wearing masks, being in social events or where there's singing or yelling or singing, those type of more exposure and more droplet transmission in an enclosed area would, of course, be the way that that is spread most readily. Do the mitigations that we've all heard about, cleaning surfaces and disinfecting, are all extremely important, and they all play a part in the bigger picture. But if you want to narrow it down, it's droplet transmission from one person to another person.
So the importance of wearing a mask then is that it basically will contain most of those droplets and keep it from getting into a place where another person can get it into their body. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly it. So if you're wearing a mask, it's a layer, a physical layer of protection that you have that is a barrier, and therefore an important mitigation tool. And I think Sharon has quoted me in the newspaper, but it is like an onion in that the many layers of protection are essentially mitigating or increasing the chance of lessening that transmission. So if you're in a place that you're wearing masks, you've got that distance, and you're mindful of those mitigation tools and directives, then all of that in accumulation will help reduce the chances. Does it completely take it away? No. I was on the phone today doing some contact tracing, and the lady said to me, "But Denise, I've done it all right. I have kept everything. I have made sure that I didn't go to certain areas. I've made sure that when I was around other people, I wore masks, and I wasn't around people very often or very long, and I've done everything right. And yet I've got COVID, and how is that even possible? Well, it's possible. It's an ever evolving microscopic virus, and though we might do everything right, maybe you have medical conditions that makes that even more significant for you. Maybe your immune system is fighting off something else, a common cold or the onset of a flu. So all of these things you have to take into account. It's not that you did anything wrong per se. It's that it's just very viral. It is a tricky little thing, but wearing a mask and doing those type of things are definitely a mitigation strategy. So the whole reason that we're doing what we're doing is to slow the spread. It's to minimize the spread. Yeah. To eradicate it, we're not going to be able to do that with these measures. We're not going to be able to get rid of COVID completely, but we need to learn to live with it. And learning to live with it, we've got some just general rules of thumb that we've all learned and that we're all going by, and those help.
Great. So I want to just touch on some of these questions, make sure we answer the specific questions about what type of mask is best and are surgical masks better than cloth masks? And should cloth masks be washed?
Yeah.
And
So, of course, the best mask for is a medical grade mask, and it's fit tested, and that's an N95 mask. That's for medical workers. And outside of that, if you're not a medical worker, then the best masks are the ones that number one you wear. That's the best mask, and then the second best is that you wear it correctly. And I'm not being facetious. Those are truly the best masks, the ones that are worn and worn correctly. If there's gaps around here, around your nose, and or worn down here, or worn under here, it's not going to be as effective. If you have a tighter fit around here and around your face and all the way down, that's your more effective mask. One of the things that you can do is do a light test or a candlelight test. So if you have a mask, and I'm just going to pull one here. One of my colleagues just gave me and made for me. So it's a real pretty mask. It is functional. It covers the nose and up and under the glasses, all the way, hooks around here and goes around your ears. And as you can see, it's fitted and fits nicely all the way around, not gaps. So that is one important thing. And the light test that I was talking about is actually if you hold this up, see, there's a light behind me. If you hold that up to a light or to a candle, you should not see any light through your mask. If you're seeing light through your mask, then you're also getting air particles through that mask or virus particles through that mask. And so to have it dense, tightly woven material, at least 2 layers, this is a 2-layer mask, but it's tightly woven. Kind of like, you know, if your sheets are 300 thread count, they're a little bit better sheet than something that is 100 thread count. Same thing with the mask fabric. So if your thread count is, or if it's tightly woven, you're not going to see that light through it. And therefore, it is going to stop that spread of those particles that are escaping. So that's a test that you can do. The least effective masks are gator masks, and I don't have one to show you, but those are the ones that just kind of pull up, that are like a turtleneck that you pull up. Those are the least effective masks, and bandanas. Those are the 2 that are least effective because they're loose fitting and typically 1 layer. And so that would be the least effective ones that you can wear. Regarding soiled and or wet masks, I believe that you have a great, Martha, little link that you can show.
Sure.
On some masks, and when to wash them and how to wash them. But primarily, you're washing that mask when it is soiled and when it is wet, so daily. And what I've shared with some of our kids, some of our younger kids, is you wouldn't wear your underwear several days, but don't wear your mask several days. So it's just one of those things that, you know, you can keep in your mind and you can teach your kids and have some fun with. But you wouldn't reuse your underwear, you shouldn't reuse your mask. And if you're exercising and it gets wet, then that is also a problem because it can actually, you know, stop doing its job. So it gives you a false sense of security if it is dirty or wet. Or so definitely want to make sure that you're washing it every day, and that you have an effective one that fits on your face, and that you're willing to wear it and that you do wear it.
Great tip. I will always remember the underwear rule now. I'm sharing these links on the chat if people want to follow up and look at these links that we're sharing. And just one final point to make about masks, Denise. Some questions are around, should I wear it outside, or should children who are playing sports wear masks while they are playing sports? Or I guess that applies to anyone who is playing a sport. You know, we've all seen some inconsistencies. Some people wear them outside, some people do not. Some sports teams require it, some do not. So can you lend some clarity to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So It is always good to have a mask in your pocket. I'll say that. If you have a mask in your pocket and you have a second mask, that's great. If you come across somebody, if you're walking down the street, you're coming across somebody, you see them, or you know you're going into a place that has other people, then the best practice is to wear your mask. If you're walking along outside, walking your dog in a place that there really isn't anybody else around, you don't need to wear your mask. Have one in your pocket for in case you cross somebody. On the hiking trails, I get that question, do I have to wear a mask on the hiking trails? You know, our hiking trails are really busy. They're busier than what you think sometimes. And if you're out there and you're hiking and you're familiar with the hike, you know there's nobody in that area, then you can take that off. But have it in your pocket and ready, because if you're crossing people on the trail and you do that multiple times, you want to be able to show them respect, that you care about their health, and have that mask. It is for the wearer and it is for the people that you walk past. It helps both ways. So wear it for them and you wear it for yourself as well. As far as the sports, I saw a question about, you know, a group of people. Do you recommend wearing masks for student athletes outdoors with 6 foot social distancing is not being maintained? Yeah. Anytime, whether it's sports or any other outing, if 6 feet, at least 6 feet distance cannot be maintained, that's the minimum, then that's considered too close for comfort, and you really should be wearing a mask in that situation. When you're out running, if you're going to pass somebody and getting ready to pass somebody and you see them coming, put the mask on, because you are expelling quite a few air particles, virus particles while you're running past somebody. So of course, it's always good to have that. And again, just one in your pocket for those situations that arise that you might not have thought of, has came in handy for me, and I know that it has for others as well.
Great. Well, thanks for that. I think we covered masking. I think next, the next sort of line of questions that I think would flow from this is people, many of the questions are about testing for COVID. And so we have some questions in our lineup about the return time for COVID testing in Sitka, concerns about how long that will take and how reliable are rapid tests versus other types of tests. And then flowing from there, we can talk about the hotline and maybe then travel. That would be great.
Okay. So yeah, testing is a hot topic and has been since the start of this, and will probably continue to be a hot topic of conversation as we continue to grow and learn. We are learning a lot about testing. When we first started, we knew very little, and now we are learning quite a bit and expecting quite a bit and expecting more out of our testing. And so, you know, that's evolving and we're growing and learning, and that's a good thing. So with regards to time, how long a test takes and how long should it take, and basically where is it getting held up at? You know, why is it taking so long to get results? It kind of ebbs and flows. So if the demand is high and on our labs to produce the results, that of course is going to create a backlog. So if we have 300 people that go through on asymptomatic testing day on Saturday, and those 300 tests get put in, and some of them are handled in-house and some of them are sent to the State Department of Epidemiology, state of Alaska. Of course, all of those places, that's one of the recipients that they receive the test. They're all over, and the Department of Epidemiology and Alaska State Lab and even the smaller labs are just bursting at the seams right now. We are having several people, test and retest, and now we have asymptomatic testing, which is awesome, and we have symptomatic testing. And then we do large clusters as well. If there was an outbreak in a long-term care facility, or in a prison, or in homeless shelter, such as in Juneau, what happened, any of those things increase the need for testing and slow down actually the test results. It doesn't always work that way, though, because some days it seems that within 24 hours I have a result back, and somebody is letting me know that they're positive. And sometimes it can be a hold up in maybe an incorrect information was provided, a bad phone number. I can't tell you how many bad phone numbers I've called, and that delays in getting back with them for contact tracing. Also emails, search responds via email. Your test result is one of the ways that they do it. And if they have a bad email address, they're scrambling and trying hard to try to figure out how to fix that so that they can get that information. So there's the person delays that happen with bad information or misinformation or missing information. And then there's the demand versus how many people can actually do the testing, how quickly. And so there's the delays in that. I would not say that we can point a finger at one culprit. I think it is, a bunch of things that bring that slow testing down where we've seen an increase of days. So that's just what we have to deal with. And still, we are working hard at making sure that the turnaround time is as low as we can. Contact tracing, I saw on one of the questions, contact tracing, how quickly does somebody get a call from that? Within 24 hours. Within 24 hours in Sitka, you will get, if you're a Sitka resident, you will get a call. And that's just because we're a little smaller. In Anchorage, it could be a couple of days before you get, 3 days before you get a phone call from a contact tracer, giving you information and answering your questions and doing some tracing with you. So be patient. It's an ever evolving process. We're trying. We've onboarded several nurses, retired nurses, UAA staff. We've had the National Guard help us. 100 plus National Guard is helping. So we are doing everything we can for a quick turnaround after the results are given to the Department of Epidemiology. Then public health and the state of Alaska employee is as quickly as possible. They're getting a phone call to you. So our goal is 24 hours statewide, and on certain days we meet that goal. And on other days where we have, case counts over 200 to up to 300, that makes it really, really difficult to do some very involved contact tracing. So there's that as well. Let's see, with regards to which tests are more reliable. A test is a tool, and they're good tools. No matter what test it is still a test and still a way of detecting virus. However, there are some that are a little bit more reliable, a little bit more sensitive than others. The rapid tests are not as sensitive as what they call a PCR test or a diagnostic test. Diagnostic test, they detect the virus and they can either be molecular or antigen. And a molecular test is like the PCR test. They detect the virus's genetic material. So it gets a little scientific when you start looking at the various kinds, but it's good to know. And then there are antigen tests, and those detect specific proteins that are on the surface of the virus. They're good tests. As far as like the rapid test, because it's quicker, they want a question was, is it more reliable? It's less sensitive. So if you're in this window of when you're shedding the most virus, will it pick it up? Yes, it will. If you're outside that window, and it's a very small window of a few days, about 5 days, if you're in that window, or say you're too early and you just picked up the virus and you don't even have symptoms yet, it will not detect it. There's a very sensitive, there's a very small window that it can actually be read, and you're shedding enough virus for it to be picked up. And the PCR tests are the ones in the laboratory that takes a little bit more time, and those are highly sensitive, and gone through the Department of Epidemiology. They don't just run one test and say that's good. They do many, they do many processes to that. So they'll put it through a battery of tests, and then they'll do another one and another one. So to make sure that there aren't false positives, they will put it through quite a battery of several tests, not just one. And so it's highly sensitive and highly technical and takes time. And so that's why it takes a little bit more time. In the window in which it can read is much larger than the rapid test, where there's a few days. This window is much larger and can detect pre-symptoms, can detect even if you don't have symptoms, and can actually, if you're positive and tested positive for COVID, can actually continue to pick up shedding virus, dead virus, for up to 3 months. So it is highly sensitive. Does that make it better? Not necessarily so. It depends on what your need is. It's kind of like, oh, this is going to be kind of a fun analogy, but if you're hungry, you can quickly go through a drive-through and get something really fast, or you can go home and, cook something. It just takes longer. So which one's better? Depends. What are you looking at? Nutrition-wise, there's just many reasons why there's the two different tests and they're both good. Say you need a quick test because you need the answer now. It's, say, for example, in a long-term care facility. You don't want to wait several days. You'd want a quick test. So that's why we have a rapid test. Let's do a rapid test. Oftentimes, then a longer PCR test will follow after that rapid test, just to ensure. And so that's why one test will happen and then another test will happen. And some people have asked me, well, how come there's so many tests? Well, because they're just trying to make sure. But once you got a positive, you are positive. And that's the thing that that I find that most people have difficulty understanding that. And if there's something to be learned this evening, it's that once you're a positive, you're a positive. The Department of Epidemiology recognizes a positive as a true positive, and there's no such thing as a false positive, unless it is at a lab level, where at the laboratory there was a confusion or a mix up of samples or something of that nature. A positive truly is a true positive, even if you don't have symptoms. And that's the hardest thing for people to understand, is that. But it's sort of like, this analogy is a simple one, but it's one that I use. It's like a pregnancy test. If a woman takes a pregnancy test, that pregnancy test looks for a certain hormone in that woman's body. If that hormone is not there, the woman is not pregnant and will be negative. There's not a false negative there's not a false positive in a pregnancy test. If the woman tests positive, it's because that test has picked up that hormone, and it wouldn't pick it up if it wasn't there. And it's the same thing with this test for COVID. If the virus is there, it will pick that up. and it will be a positive, whether you have symptoms or not. Now,
Excuse me,
I'm
there's
sorry.
just a couple follow-up questions with the testing, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. The questions are coming in now. Are the free tests on the weekend finding asymptomatic cases? And what's the approximate percentage of asymptomatic, I guess, versus symptomatic is the follow-up. And then the third question is, which tests are done at the airport? Do you have that information?
Yeah, see if I can remember all that at the end of the day.
Sure.
Okay, so yes, asymptomatic testing is going on the weekends, and that's amazing. The more people that test, the more the more tests that are being done, the more that we can see where this virus is in our community. Mm-hmm. So it is good to do it, and it is appropriate to do it. And so, are we getting results from that? Yes, we are. We have people that have tested that don't have symptoms or have very mild symptoms. Say they suffer from sinus and congestion, and they just thought it was their sinuses, and they find out actually they're positive, and they're doing it through the weekend testing. So that is extremely valuable. As far as a percentage, I can't really say the percentage that we're getting from that. I would say it isn't high, but that's because there's not a high percentage in Sitka. It would be a higher percentage if we had more per capita, but we don't. So as far as giving a percentage, I'm not really able to do that, but look at the dashboard and you would be able to determine if it's a community spread and if they're asymptomatic. Or if it's secondary spread, which means they know somebody and that's how they got it, and or the community spread. You're more likely to find the community spread. That's a little higher right now in Sitka than anything else, and so we're more apt to find community spread with that testing site on the weekends for asymptomatic.
Great. And the dashboard you're referring to is the Department of Health and Human Services dashboard that shows by community which tests are, or which cases, like what's the breakdown of cases in each community, is that correct?
I'm actually talking about our Sitka City dashboard.
Okay, great. Good.
Yeah, the COVID dashboard, and I have a link for that somewhere, and I can throw that up. Okay. But that would be the what I'm looking at here. Just a second, I can do two things at once. So that is the Sitka City on that website is that dashboard. There you go. And on that, it's renewed or updated at 5 o'clock every day. And it is done by search, done by myself on the community information, and then there's some airport information as well. I know you had a question on airport. What was that question?
The question was which type of testing is done at the airport, and it's because earlier you were clarifying the difference between the more sensitive test versus the rapid test. So the follow-up question is, well, which type of test do we get when we do the free testing at search or a test at the airport?
And that's a good question, and I think they do both. That you'll have to probably, I don't know the answer to that exactly. I do know that they have the ability to do both testing. They have the Abbott M2000 machine that is quick responding, and that's within hours they can have that result. So, and we have that, and then we have the Cepheid machine. And like I said, there's several of them that they have, but that is also reduces the out of state, and is a quick turnaround of about 2 days is what we've seen. So 2 to 3 days. So we have that ability. Which one they choose to use for what, I don't have an answer for. I just know that they have the ability to do both.
Okay. And just wrapping up our conversation about testing, there is testing locally available in Sitka, both for symptomatic and asymptomatic individuals. There were some questions about whose tests get priority over what others. And I think you answered that very clearly, that it kind of depends on the general volume of how many tests need to be done in a given day, but also there are priorities given to certain populations. If, for example, an outbreak occurred in a long-term care facility, or in a homeless shelter, or someplace where people are living in close quarters, those tests would become more urgent than, say, a asymptomatic person who came through on a Saturday. So there is some reprioritization, but the most common driver for how long it takes to get a test back is just what the volume is in general, and how quickly the machines can, take the load. The testing that's done at the airport, the testing that's done in the free test at Search, those, I believe, in general are the ones done in the Suffield, except for there are exceptions to that. So that's good to know right there. I think I want to just double make sure that we've answered all our questions on testing. About the
I do have something I'd like to add about testing. The best use of testing is timing.
Okay.
It really is all about timing. If you test 5 days, and this is like a mathematical equation that we have narrowed it down to. If you test on day 5 after an exposure, so say you went to a dinner party and you found out your friend is positive and they've let you know, or you saw that they had symptoms and now you're curious and concerned. If you test 5 days after that exposure, your test is 50% more accurate. So if you test on day 7 after an exposure, and this is where I tell people wait 7 days and then test, it is about 80% accurate.
Okay.
So if you're going to test, there is a method to the madness. If you have came into contact with somebody and you're suspicious, or they tell you they have symptoms, or they're waiting on a test and they think it's positive, or it is positive, if you test day 7 after that day that you came into contact with them, you have an 80% more accurate rate on that test sensitivity.
Okay.
So that's a mathematical equation that's key.
Great. Great feedback coming in through the chat and through the questions. Question about, there's a couple questions kind of related to travel. I'm going to hold that one and bring it in when we're talking about travel. One more quick question about masks, just jumping back to that for just a minute. If a mask gets wet from breathing in the cold, particularly if you're playing a sport outside, is it not as effective anymore?
That's correct. It is not.
Okay, so trying to keep a dry mask on as quickly as possible. Your solution that you offered, have one in your pocket, and if you're doing a vigorous activity, maybe have a couple.
Yeah, I have masks in every pocket. So and in my car, and masks everywhere. I think everybody else does too. But a second mask, because you don't know who you're going to come across. If you're even planning a walk by yourself,
Yep.
You don't know who you're going to come across. So you want to protect yourself and them. And then also you might feel like, jogging, or it might rain and get wet, or it might be just the way in which you go to work, and that's part of your working environment, is that it gets moist and wet. So definitely you'll want to have a clean, dry one, a new one that you can put on.
Great. Quick question about the hotline. Is there hope that the COVID hotline in Sitka will get more staff? Do you have a good answer for that?
I don't have a good answer for that. I do know that we have a hotline, and that they are the most amazing people on the other end. They will call me and give me heads up and ask questions and deliver somebody right to me that is really struggling. And just the care that goes into it is amazing. So could they use extra help? With the amount of time that they put into it, probably they could. I think we all could use some extra bodies. But that would have to be, I don't know, maybe you can answer that, Martha. I don't have an answer if they're going to hire or not.
Sure. The information I do have on the hotline that's available in Sitka is that it is now open 7 days a week, and it is open from 8 to 5. It is true that if the nurse is on the phone with an individual when someone else calls, they do get put into a voicemail that will have to be answered later. And also if calls come that are not in the business hours, 8 to 5, they go directly to a voicemail and will have to be called back later. So some delays could occur depending on when the calls come and how busy the line is. But the nurses are very systematically getting back to each of the callers. I do know that in general, the call line is receiving between 20 to 50 calls in a day. So again, if as best they can, they're getting back to people and getting back to through the voicemails to make sure people's questions are answered. So these are great questions. This is so much fun. We're just whipping right through. I love it. Moving on to a big topic with lots of questions about this one. Travel, and I'm going to use there's a question about testing before travel, testing after travel. Does Sitka offer a test that is required to go to the state of Hawaii? Is a very specific question. How do you want to work through the travel questions, Denise?
Through the testing?
Yeah.
Well, I just threw up a link for travel, and so I think that will get have some answers for you.
Okay.
As far as traveling, so I had some questions here that I'm looking at, and we can come back around if this isn't good enough. But were we talking about the mandate?
Yeah, the mandate. I just shared the mandate with the entire group, and that is
okay.
Yep.
Okay. So
that has a lot of great information for what to do if you're going in state versus out of state, but we could probably touch on some basics.
Well, the three major changes with the mandate 10, if the revision is mostly I believe it to be mostly geared around the lightening up on travel. So because we're seeing more community spread, second spread, and not necessarily travel spread. It doesn't mean that it doesn't occur, but it is occurring less. So they decided to lighten up on the travel, and you might see that in the new revision. There's three major changes to the new revision, and that is the requirement for strict social distancing has been replaced to 5 days after arrival instead of 7 to 14 days, with one negative test prior to travel upon arrival in Alaska. The other second change, is the requirement for the second test after day 5 of strict social distancing is now recommended, but not required, and still can be obtained at the traveler testing sites at no cost. The third change is the time period an Alaska resident is allowed to be out of the state before a test is required has increased from 24 hours to 72 hours. So now you have 72 hours before that out-of-state test is required. So that is the major three changes, and it's primarily around lightening up around flying.
Okay.
Trying to make that just a little bit easier. Did we some questions around?
Sure.
Testing Hawaii, you said, or something like that?
Well, one of the questions is, do we offer the test that is required to go to the state of Hawaii? And so I don't know what that test is. So
I'm not sure what that test is either, but I'd like to go to Hawaii. So, yeah. But I'm assuming that it would be the same for any of the other, lower 48. You would test. You don't have to test to leave Alaska, but some of the places that you enter into those states, you'll need to know what they want. If they require testing prior to arrival, then you'll need to have that test, whether it's 72 hours or 24 hours, and have that test a negative result before you enter into that state. Doing a little bit of research to check on what that state requires will save you some time in a hotel and have that test available. I would recommend testing before you flew somewhere so that you had that test in your pocket or on your phone, and you had that available. As far as coming back, that we need to test at the airport, and then I believe they give you a voucher, and within a number of days, I think it's 5 days, you can retest again, and 2 negative tests then reduce that time, unless your employer has something different. Sometimes the employer will have you quarantine for 14 days and have 2 tests. It's up to the employer what they require. But as far as the state, what the state requires and the mandate is that now you can have that second test after 5 days. And then if you have a negative test, then you are good to go.
So if you leave the state, it's good to check with wherever it is you're going to determine what those requirements are going to be, whether it's Hawaii or wherever you're going. That's a good point. So, and you probably will need to do an asymptomatic test before you go. That's a good tip. And then you have that result right with you. That's handy. And then coming back to the state, if you're gone for longer than 72 hours, if I heard you right, there's another series of activities, and all of this is outlined on the link that you shared. But basically, if you've been out of state for longer than 72 hours, you have a couple of different options of how to deal with the COVID requirements for Alaska. It does involve a series of tests or quarantining, different options for each individual. And so the best thing to do would maybe look at that PDF and decide which choice is going to be the right one for you. For intrastate, excuse me, here's a specific question of an individual who is traveling to Anchorage from Sitka. Do they need to test when they go to Anchorage? Do they need to test when they return? Is that a question that we're able to quickly answer, Denise?
Yeah, test when you return.
Okay.
When you return back, Anchorage has a more per capita than we do. So you're looking at when you make those travel plans, and I guess this is a good interlude into that question. With that question, look at where you're going, and not only what they recommend or what they mandate for you to have that test or not, and to see where you can enter, with a test, or if you don't need one at all. But also look at and judge the risk level of where you're going. So oftentimes they'll have on their city page, a dashboard or a state page, so that they will show their activity, how many people have COVID, how many people have tested, and that kind of data and that kind of information be very helpful for you. If you're going into a place of higher risk, you should know that. You should know that you're going into perhaps red risk level versus the yellow that we're enjoying right now. And decipher if that is, still, and just calculate that risk and see if that's still something you want to do. And it might very well be so, but there might be a very good reason. Be prepared. Know that you're going into an area that is higher risk level. And therefore you really want to social distance. You really want to stay out of some places. Look to see if there's any clusters, or groups of people, or there's outbreaks, and stay away from those type of places that have those outbreaks. So not only are you looking at, gee, where should I travel? What is there? What do I need to get into that place? But also, is it worth the risk? And it might be. You might need a surgery, and that's where you go. And so that's fine. Just being educated with that will be very helpful. Also, look and see if it's community spread. If it's community spread, in which we are seeing an increase across all of Alaska in community spread, it just lets you know that somewhere in the community there are some asymptomatic people that they really can't trace it back to a person. And then that's community spread. And so just being aware of that as well.
really helpful. One question that leads right off of that is it safe to travel over the holidays? Is it even flying in a small space with proper masking? How safe is that? Can you speak to some of those typical risks of just being on an airplane?
Yeah, sure. So, anytime you travel, anytime you go somewhere, or even just locally into a more public place, you're going to increase that risk. And then that's just something that you need to decide if that is something that you can do, willing to do, and, can do so well enough. Um, Sorry, if you're getting the vacuum cleaner, it's because we're having cleaning done. It's late here. So if you have that background noise. Anyway, so holiday travel is important, and your family and your time is important. And again, it's all about slowing the spread and not eradicating it. So if you choose to travel for holiday, um, kind of like your shopping list, look ahead, plan ahead, decide what you're willing to do, decide what you're not willing to do. So if you're going to travel and you have people inviting you out to dinner, maybe you'll do the travel, but maybe suggest having, a barbecue on their patio instead of going out to dinner. It's those kinds of things that you need to look at and say, okay, maybe a gathering of 10 is safe and everybody is tested. And then that way it's, come join us for Christmas. Everybody has tested, we're negative, and we want you to come with us, and just, it's kind of a more planning of event than in the past. I wouldn't discourage celebrating the holidays. We've had a tough year. And we need an outlet, and we need each other, and we need family and time, and it's a great time to celebrate the good things. We just might need to plan a little bit more, and they might look a little different. So you just take that into account. You've got to get on an airplane. You're increasing your risk of being subjected to COVID-19 by entering a plane. You just are. It's a group of people in a small place. You can wear a mask, you can wear a shield, you can clean your area, even though they are cleaning them. You can keep your flight short, I don't know. There's just those things that you just have to look at. Restaurants, if you can eat out on the patio, it's a great thing. Will it be completely safe? No, it's not, just because simply you're in an area with other people around that you don't know. So, but you can take steps to help increase that mitigation and that layer. It's again layering, wearing a mask, distancing, being outside, having windows open, just changing plans and deciding not to eat out, changing plans and not going to a movie. Maybe every year you went to a movie on Christmas Eve. Maybe this year you probably should do a movie inside and with less people, So it's just a different, it's going to be a different Christmas. It's going to be a different Thanksgiving, and it definitely was a different Alaska Day for us. So enjoy them, enjoy the holidays, enjoy family. Just think through what's really important. And of course, if you're immune compromised or you have some medical conditions and you make yourself a little bit more heightened, awareness needs to come with that individual. Perhaps this year you will sit out Thanksgiving so that you can enjoy another year of Thanksgiving when there's some vaccines and things in place. So it's up to the individual, and you just calculate those risks of what you're willing to do, and then just be, do the best that you can do.
Yep, it's hard not to have a real hard and fast answer for that, but I think you've laid out sort of the pros and cons of it. There's nothing that's going to be 100% risk-free, but everything is going to be a balance of the risks and the benefits for sure. Couple questions about flu shots, and this could also kind of lead into someone's possible planning as we all are going forward, looking toward the winter time. What is your recommendation on flu shots? And the particular questions are about why should a person get a flu shot, and for another person, I don't normally worry about getting the flu. Why should I worry about getting COVID? So there are a couple questions around flu shots in particular as they relate to COVID. So maybe you can speak to those.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't worried about the flu in the past, it's because more than likely everybody else worried for you. So if I didn't get a flu shot, but everybody else around me got a flu shot, or the majority, that can work as herd immunity. That is something that we have in the past been able to enjoy with the common flu and influenza. It is there's a vaccination available. We all boost our immune system. And then the severity of the flu is less. And so we've been able to enjoy that in the past. This is a little different than that. It is not the common flu, and we don't have herd immunity. We can't obtain herd immunity, and we have no vaccination. So it's different than if you haven't worried about the flu, why should you worry about COVID? Two very different things, and both very serious. If you end up with the flu and you end up with COVID, they call that a double whammy, and that wouldn't be very good for you health-wise. So preparing and getting the vaccination and boosting that immune system is very imperative right now, extremely imperative right now. If you've never gotten one before, that's fine. It doesn't mean you can't get one now. And it surely doesn't mean you don't need one. We're in a pandemic, and so if there are flu shots available, this is definitely the year to do it for the first year. And I've met many people that have said, I've never done it before, you know, and they have reasons why. A lot of them is around the fear of vaccinations, or you know, there's a misnomer out there that if you get a flu shot, you get the flu. But it's not the case. It's man-made in a lab. It's not the flu. You can't get it from it. It's not a live virus, but it does boost your immune system, and it does react to that shot. Your body does. So you might get an increase in temperature. You might feel a little poor under, not have as much energy that day, and definitely hurt where you are, where you got the shot in your arm. Might be sore for a day. But otherwise, then you escape the flu, which is much worse. And this flu season, this vaccination is very mild. It's a very tame one, and I have just gotten all reports back from the ones that Search has provided and that I provided, that we haven't had any problems or concerns with that. So it's a very mild one. It's a good one to get. It will boost your immune system, so that if you are to come across COVID or an individual with COVID, your immune system would be boosted, and hopefully then that would reduce the symptoms, or you might not get it at all. You know, it is not a vaccination for it, for COVID, but for the influenza, but boosting your immune system will help in that. Would you like me to go into the vaccination of COVID?
A couple more questions are coming up though, real quick on flu. Where is the safest place to get a flu shot?
Safest place?
Mm-hmm.
Just any place that is offering a flu shot. They have health professionals that can offer that to you. Your doctor's office, the pharmacy. There's been a community one through Search. There's options for you to get the flu shot. Any place by a health professional is going to be safe.
Okay, great. And then one more question on testing. If a person is traveling I guess, wait, I'm trying to read this, sorry. The turnaround time, if the turnaround time for the test is longer than the, I guess, a 72-hour requirement for traveling to another state, is there any other option for getting tested? So if they went through the drive-through on Saturday, for example, and then they didn't travel until the next Thursday, their test would be older than 72 hours. The result wouldn't meet. Are there other options for testing and traveling?
If they're asymptomatic and testing
Right.
for traveling, it's a bit tricky, to be honest with you. It is. Testing, if you can test on the weekend and take advantage of then flying within that time frame, you might have to schedule your flight around that time frame. Maybe your provider can provide something, and maybe they can take into account past medical history, concerns coming into contact. It would be good to reach out to the COVID hotline. It would be good to reach out to your provider, letting them know you're traveling, and explain the situation. I don't have a pat answer saying, that there's a place for that is a travel pre-testing travel site. We don't have anything like that, but definitely you want to keep that in mind when you're looking at entering into the place, whether it's safe, hours of travel, what the recommendations are. It's all of that pre-planning and preparation that is going to save you some time and money.
Totally. Thank you for that. I'm going to move us on to a next series of questions that are about symptoms, symptoms of COVID and how to sort of watch for the telltale signs. If a person is experiencing classic cold symptoms, sneezing, pressure in the sinuses, but no fever or shortness of breath, would you suggest that they get tested for COVID and isolate until they have a negative test result?
Yeah, so that's kind of tricky because, we have the common cold, it didn't go away. We have the common allergies, those didn't go away. What I typically say is, if it's not common to you, if you don't typically suffer from allergies and all of a sudden you're congested, and you're a little tired, I would say test. Those are symptoms, and they shouldn't be ignored. Say you do have, allergies, and this is the time of the year that you always get this. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe you can take advantage of the asymptomatic testing on the weekend and test that way. So that's really up to your discretion and really what is your normal. If it's outside of your norm, if it's outside of how you typically feel day to day, then it's a symptom and it shouldn't be ignored. Even if it's a mild symptom, even if it's the congestion, the runny nose, we're seeing a lot of that, a lot of congestion, runny nose, just not feeling normal up to self. That is a very common one right now. So very mild. Definitely to the other extreme, if you've lost your sense of taste, smell, if you are a little bit confused, and I had somebody the other day explain it to me very well what confusion was. He said, and I feel like I've taken a bunch of flu medicine, and I'm drowsy and kind of fuzzy. And he goes, like if you overdosed on flu medicine, he goes, but I haven't taken any. Well, that would be a good example of what that confusion is like. So if you have any of those things going on, then definitely symptomatic and definitely want to test. And then isolate and self-isolate and wait for that phone call before you proceed in going any further than that. And again, if you had symptoms and you have been tested and you tested negative, you might have missed the window in which that was picked up. And if you're sick, stay home. Even if you got a negative test, retest again in a few days. Because oftentimes people get symptoms the day after testing or 2 days after testing, and then that's when they are getting the symptoms, and they're just testing for something routine or before a surgical procedure or before a dental procedure. And then 2 days after that test, they start to feel symptoms. So you might have missed that window. So the important thing is, if you're sick, stay home. Your employers will understand what's going on. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and so I think, and I would like to believe that people are going to be a little bit more gracious and understanding. And I have seen that here with our businesses and our people here, that they have been. So sick, stay home, and something out of the ordinary for you, even if it's mild, get tested and remain laying low and self-isolating until you get the results.
Great advice. Okay, we have a couple more questions. I want to make sure we meet everybody's questions. I think we're on good time though. We do have a question about the vaccine for COVID. What is the latest information on a possible vaccine? When and how would it be available? And how do I know if it's safe since it's being produced in such a short time? That's actually 3 questions, but I thought I'd let you just hear them all at once and you can take it away.
All right. They're great questions. The vaccine is a hot topic right now. So I will tell you what I know, which isn't a whole lot about vaccines, but this is what I know. So when will it be available? We're looking for the state of Alaska, that it could be as early as November and December of this year. So it's right around the corner. It could be later than that, but this is what the thought is around it at this time. Could be as early as November, December. It's different, and I don't know how much has been on the news. To be honest with you, I haven't really been listening a lot. But it's 2 phases. If you haven't heard that, the initial vaccination is going to be produced by Pfizer, and that's phase 1, and it's called Vaccine A. And Vaccine A, it's a bit tricky in that we have to do some things with this vaccine that we haven't had to do with any other vaccine, and that has to do with temperature, keeping it at the right temperature. And if you know about vaccines, when you go to get a vaccine, we oftentimes pull it out of the refrigerator. Or if it's varicella chickenpox, we pull that out of the freezer. But we have to keep temperatures at a constant state at a certain degrees. And it's no different for this. However, what is different about this is we have to keep it at around a negative 70 degrees Celsius, or that is a negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's super, super ultra cold. Yeah. And that is something that quite possibly can be done with dry ice or a flash freeze type of a thing. It can be kept for 5 days or 72 hours, but has to be used at that. So being in Alaska in a rural area, we have some challenges being able to keep it that cold, getting it distributed, and within that time frame. So there's some challenges with that we're looking at. We're looking at the requirements of it being safe and efficient, and the distribution, of course, in some of our more rural areas, and getting people enrolled, getting people willing to take the vaccine as well. So we've got some hurdles that we need to cross. Phase 2 is the second vaccination, and that's called Vaccine B. And you need that second shot within 21 to 28 days after the first shot for full immunization. That needs to be at a negative 20 degrees. Why? I don't know. But I do know that it needs to be kept at a certain degrees, a little easier on the second shot than the first shot. So who's going to be first? Healthcare providers, those with underlying medical conditions, over 65, essential workers. Those are those that will be the first to receive a vaccination. So right now, the current focus on the vaccination with the state is, just connecting the resources for people, figuring out where the needs are, enrolling providers so that they can be able to give that vaccination. And then, just looking at the critical population who needs to have that vaccine. Of course, proper storage. Now that you know that it's a little bit tricky, there's some extra steps that we need to take. The handling, and then there's the tracking of to ensure that people get their second shots. So it's not just a one and done, but you have to have 2 shots, and we have to track that. So that will be a challenge as well. And then, of course, watching for and concerned mostly about adverse reactions, and then caring for those people that might have adverse reactions as well. So it's not an easy, nor is it going to be a quick program that will be rolled out, but we're looking at around the corner here within the next couple of months, if not that, within the new year. So a little bit more, there will not be a COVID vaccine mandate. So I wanted to let you know that there are no plans for there to be any kind of COVID-19 mandate. It's of choice, whether you choose to take that or not take that. And then there was a question, will it be safe? Is this a safe vaccine? And what I can tell you is that there are many vaccines currently undergoing clinical trials in various stages of those clinical trials. But at the end stage, all of them have to be authorized by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. And so this is the agency that's responsible for making sure that all vaccines are safe and effective. And it will be no different with this one. So it will go through some rigorous testing before the FDA will even approve that. And that's about what I know about vaccinations.
That's a lot of great information. Thanks for that. We have a couple more questions on our list. Looking at just general risk and prevention, a couple questions about, can COVID be spread through food? So is it safe to eat at restaurants that have outdoor dining? Is it safe to cook for others? So specifically around food, and also just other objects such as doorknobs, groceries. Should people be concerned about that?
Yeah, sure. So good questions, good everyday basic questions. Can it be spread through food? It's not a likely transmission through food. Again, it's person to person, droplet in closed environments, or those that are really expelling that virus at a high rate, such as talking loud, talking fast, singing, those type of things. That is how it is mainly main transmission is for that. The CDC continues to believe that based on current science, that people are more likely to become infected the longer and the closer they are with people. So again, it's that cumulative time frame as well. How many people have you been with, and how long you've been with them, that can add up. So it's those mitigation measures that we all know so well, washing our hands and wearing the mask and cleaning surfaces, also very important to help keep us well and healthy. So definitely want to continue to do those. As far as food, we do cook it at a high temperature. Even those foods that aren't cooked, it is not likely to have that, you're not likely to have that transmission from that type of fomite. It is a person to person. How can I safely cook for others? Again, it's more the social aspect of it. It is more the place rather than the food. Keeping those measures in mind will help you to plan. Will help you to plan your food preparations for people.
Great.
And we talked a little bit about the restaurants, and outdoor dining, of course, is better than indoor dining. However, wearing a mask cannot be completely fully, done in an eating environment. And so anytime you're in that environment and sharing and socializing with others without a mask, that increases the risk for that.
Certainly. Great clarifications there. One other question in the question and answer regarding the after effects of the illnesses. How common is it for an individual affected by COVID to come down with some other illness like Guillain-Barré syndrome?
That is a very good question. That is the unknowns that we talk about. for instance, like with a polio vaccination,
Mhm.
and those that do not receive the polio vaccination, they can for 15 to even more years, 15 years or plus, then not have any symptoms and all of a sudden have the symptoms then. So we're looking at something like that. The risk, of course, increases if you've had COVID. It is now considered a pre-existing medical condition. So if you have had COVID, it is something that you would declare upon going to see the doctor or any healthcare agency, just like you would diabetes or asthma or any other medical condition. It is a medical condition now. And partly because we don't know what will happen afterwards. So you might have had a very mild case with no symptoms, but years from now, there might be something that develops that they will link back to COVID. So just being aware of it's not just the now, and I can get through these symptoms, and it's not that big a deal. It really is a big deal. It really is, because we just don't know if there's an inflammatory or a nervous system or an autoimmune system that's going to play a part in later down the road, after we've recovered and had vaccinations and all of that. We can still be able to connect those lines. Unfortunately, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so that's just all the more being safe, and keeping yourself healthy and getting your flu vaccination and doing those things so that you are in the best health that you can be in, and lowering those pre-medical conditions that are within your ability to lower, such as stop smoking, and if possible, cut back on certain things that are lifestyle changes that we can do. Cutting back on just even consumption and losing weight will lower the chance of diabetes, will also lower your risk level for COVID. So it's those things that we can look at, maintaining and keeping your blood pressure low, whether that be via medication, diet, exercise, in the very ways that we can do it. There isn't a quick fix to this, but if we can change the things that we can change and work on the things that we can work on, to boost our immune system, to lower the chances of us getting a severe case of COVID. That is all within our realm of possibility. We don't have to wait till a vaccination to do something about it. We can do something about it today. Personally, I used to enjoy a Diet Coke and think, well, that wasn't too awful, but it does slow your immune system down for 24 hours after having one. So knowing that, I've stopped drinking it. There are things that we can do. We can take this into our own hands and react to it positively and preventatively. And that's what we need to do.
Great positive advice too. I mean, I like how you said that, we can focus on the things that we can do. And what I also heard you say was a really increased self-awareness of how does my body feel today? Is this normal for me? And if it's not normal, that's a clue that then you bring in testing. That's when you bring in advice from clinical providers or the hotline or whatever it is you need to access to get yourself to the right resources. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Pay attention to that.
I think so too, and to watch our children. Oftentimes, they're busy about playing and being kids, and they're not thinking self-awareness and checking themselves. So asking them, how are you feeling today? Do you feel any different today? Without scaring them. You don't have to ask them all the time, but keep your eye on them. If they're rubbing their nose and, they don't normally do that, ask them, is your nose runny today? Without scaring our children, I think that we can educate them and they can become self-aware. so that they can say, I'm not feeling like I normally feel. And then that engage in that conversation and have that conversation with them, so that those that normally express themselves feel free to express themselves. And then there's asymptomatic testing and testing as well for children. We have seen an increase in children. The other day in the state of Alaska, but not here, I had an 8-month-old baby. So any age, unlike what was first put out into the press, any age can have a COVID positive test and have symptoms. So those that can't really express themselves, be mindful and watch and know what's normal for them and what's out of their normal.
Great. Well, Denise, Ewing, you've done a fabulous job. Thank you so much for sharing what you know today. I'm looking at the chat. We have answered the questions that have come through the chat that I can see. I believe we've also gone through, let's check our list of pre-submitted questions. I do believe we were able to get through the entire list, and I just want to run through it one more time to make sure that we got all of these. There was one question that I thought we could probably clarify. A person asked, wearing a mask, does that make you sick?
Does wearing a mask make you sick?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Quick answer.
That was the
no, it doesn't make you sick. You're not breathing in carbon dioxide. You're not making yourself sick. You're not going to smother by wearing a mask. Any of those things that you might have heard are misnomers. Really, a mask is for your protection and is a definite tool that works. So but again, we don't have laws and mandates saying that we have to. We can do so. It is a tool that has been provided to us if we so choose to use it in a very effective one.
Thanks so much. Lily, I will hand it back to you and let you do what you need to do for Raven Radio, but it's been a pleasure hosting this with everybody. Thanks everybody for being so active in the chat and in the questions. These are great. And here's some other.
Yeah, I just threw up some additional information on COVID-19 really quick like that. And also just at the very end, if you would like to help with contact tracing efforts, the state is hiring and there is a web page that you can go to for steps to do some help with contact tracing.
Super. That's an exciting thing. Cool. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you so much to you both. And thank you to everyone for asking such great questions. I personally learned a lot, and this was a really, really illuminating webinar. We have another one, another Ask a COVID Expert event coming up on November 18th. That one will feature Dr. Tom Hennessy, who's an infectious disease expert and professor of public health. So if you're interested, stay tuned for more information on that. And once again, thank you to everyone who attended, and have a wonderful night. You will receive a recording of this event if you want to go back and follow up or hear one of the answers again. But yeah, I think that's it. Thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Great questions.